Warm welcome to this special episode of ETGovernment's Public Sector Leadership Series. My name is Anoop Verma. Today, our guest for this special episode is NSN Murty. He is the partner and leader, Government and Public Services, Technology and Transformation at Deloitte India. Murty has worked extensively in the areas of digital transformations, smart cities, government technology, and government experience. The topic of my today's conversation with NSN is India's digital public infrastructure, DPI, which has in the last 4 years emerged as a major driver of economic and social transformation in the country. With his extensive knowledge and experience of deployment of digital technologies for driving efficiency and transparency in systems of governance, NSN is the right person to analyze the impact, significance, and future potential of DPI. Welcome, Mr. Murty.
Good afternoon, Anoop. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Anoop.
In 2020, the size of India's economy was around $2.6 trillion. Currently, it is around $3.8 trillion. Most economists believe that by 2026, it should touch $5 trillion. Some are saying that it might even touch that figure by 2025, end of 2025. So my question is, what kind of role has the DPI played in shaping the roadmap for India to become a $5 trillion economy?
Great question to start with, Anoop. And I think DPI story of India has been acknowledged by globally everyone. Okay. Now, I think we have reached a position where we are the topmost on that. But now going forward to touch $1 trillion, a $5 trillion, and I just want to actually take a further step saying that in 2047, as a Viksit Bharat, if our target is $30 trillion, where does the DPI or DPGs play a role? And the third part of it is open networks also. How does that come into play? DPIs are creating what we call as the digital railroad infrastructure. So what it means is if you want to actually streamline the process of an organization, by putting and using the DPIs, it is going to increase or accelerate the way in which the transformation can happen at the government or that ministry or department level. That simplifies the way in which we can actually transform, we can deliver services, we can actually get the businesses to work together, and so on and so forth, the DPGs also. Now, I'll give you an example. One of the states, which is the state government of Goa, was having a lot of challenges in terms of their online building plan approvals, which are getting delayed beyond about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. At the end of the day, every single day lost is an impact on the economy of that state. And being a smaller state, it has no other means to actually look at how do we actually use a DPG or a DPI to transform the state's ease of doing business. I'm taking a totally different outside of the citizen services because economics can be understood by this. Now, after implementing what they call is a project open, they have brought down or they are bringing down the entire processing part of plan approval from 4 weeks, 2 weeks onwards to approximately 2 months is the maximum and 2 weeks is minimum. They're bringing it down to 2 minutes. So imagine the amount of time the business can spend by starting their entire infrastructure at work, and the state's economy can get benefited by them. And I can take many such examples where DPI is accelerating. So for part one was how do I actually get the core DPI elements in place to get all the social structure done and everything. But the part two is how am I using today on top of those DPIs to accelerate the economic growth. So I see these as smaller examples, but the seeds of tomorrow for a higher growth. And we all expect the India DPI, DPG now going forward. Ministry of Agriculture has announced Vistar program to connecting the farmers. That actually is another revolution. We have Samarth, which is for higher education. Diksha is already there for the school education. The SIDH, which is for skill development. Every single ministry, when they get themselves aligned with the DPI, DPG story, the transformation will help multiply and accelerate the economic growth. It's a indirect. The foremost is the service delivery, but actually the main benefit is the economic growth. And I see a substantial amount of direct and indirect contribution in the GDP by using the DPIs and DPGs going forward. And I'm not just talking about the 5 trillion. I'm looking at a 30 trillion also in 2047.
One of the problem of digital technologies is that the pace of technology innovation and enhancement can be much faster than what a typical bureaucracy, especially in India, can handle. The pace of bureaucratic change is quite slow compared to how technologies are evolving. Emerging technologies can hit the world suddenly, and suddenly all your systems become obsolete. There can be cyber attacks also. The present DPI structure is mostly founded on cutting-edge technologies, which are working wonderfully as of now. But what can the country do to ensure that the DPI continues to remain technologically relevant in the next 5 to 10 years? Like you talked about 2047. I mean, that's a long way to go. So we don't know what kind of technologies we'll have in the next 5 years.
No, so Anup, I think yes, this is a very big challenge in front of us. The capacity, the technical capacities within the organization too. Uh, One is to actually adopt the tech. The DPI can be the second part of it. Okay, so the technology, the new and emerging technologies, but how do they actually use the DPIs built on the emerging technologies and run this? So I'll actually take 3 points in this. Part number one, I have seen and personally experienced there's a force multiplier in terms of looking at adoption of DPI and DPGs across the central government and various states. This in itself is going to drive the technology capacity development within the states and central government, and consultants, technology players, OEMs, think tanks will play a bigger role. For example, Vadhwani runs various capacity building workshops for AI in states and the central government ministry. So the think tanks will also jump in. So that's part one. So the technical capacity development will happen very fast. Second part is, and I see this as very relevant, is the younger officers in the civil services. They are extremely tech savvy. They're what we used to call as born in cloud. Okay, so their adoption or their acceptance of a tech is extremely high. So therefore, I see a silver lining in this, saying that they will, going forward, I'm looking at 3 years or 4 years down the line, they will be far more adaptive and they will be faster in taking up this emerging tech. So I don't I see that. So what we need is the first 3 or 4 years of technical capacity building, which think tanks, government, and everyone needs to come together. Now, the immediate problem solving that we can do is, I'll refer to one of the DPIs, which is Bhashni. How Bhashni is planning to do is, Bhashni is saying, can I become a knowledge partner to every state and ministry, run on my own the hackathon startups, get the community building done, bring in the technology players and the governments to design the use cases. So what we are looking at is a much more a coalesce kind of a model where collaboration is the key between the parties which has technical capacity, which is the private sector, and the parties who needs to use it for this term, which is learn this thing, is the government getting together. So most of DPG owners like Bhashni, Ekstep, Costs, Masip, everyone, they're doing this job of bringing both of these parties together and taking. So this is a short term, quick work. The only input I expect from the government is, once this is done, they should freely and go aggressively in doing many more POCs and let the POCs fail. There's nothing much better than actually doing it fast, failing early in this emerging tech, whether it is GenAI, whether it is quantum, whether it is to do with any other cloud-based solution, but fail early. Not wait for someone else to fail and then learn from that. I think India has to now the Indian government and the entities have to take the ownership of failing early and learning fast and doing the first. So because we have to be the global leaders in doing emerging technologies integrated with DPIs.
That's a very good point, that we should fail early and learn from the mistakes. But we can also learn from the failures of the other countries. So
Yes.
we want to learn from the failures of the other countries. Which direction should we look at? Should we look at China, Korea, Taiwan, or countries like Japan, or the Western countries? And what are the emerging trends in DPI that you are noticing in these countries?
So the schools are divided. I'll not get into the regional part of it, whether it is the west or the east part of it. But I'll say that I think it should be use case driven. If I have to do anything which is to do with sustainability, energy efficiency, and DPIs and DPGs around that, there are beautiful examples around Europe. because Denmark or Netherlands and Belgium and all these, they have been actually in the forefront. Germany has been in forefront of sustainability programs. So we need to take the best of them and learn how they actually built it and learn from their mistakes also. Now, when I look at a very high-end Gen AI stuff, whether it is China or whether it is US, I think India is going to be on the forefront of those use cases. And I call it India as the hub for all use cases. Plethora of languages, 170 plus different languages. No one else can actually beat us in that. The heterogeneity of our population who asks for a service delivery, from a 80 years plus old person to a young 13 14 years people who are actually addicted to Instagram and the social media, everyone is asking for a service delivery at their own pace and at their own comfort. So the way in which service delivery has to change. So India has today the opportunity of being the use case capital, and I want to use this word, use case capital of the world. And all these emerging tech use cases can be done here, and the world learns from us. I'm not saying that it's a statement of arrogance. Actually, it's a statement of being a test lab, because our population, our heterogeneity of population, our multiplicity of languages, our regional structures, the infrastructure and all this thing helps us create those use cases, which is relevant across the world. So why I'm not looking at the best practice only at the outset, but I think India will become the hub for the use cases for the world. I want to take it reverse. And
But not everything about these DPI and digital technologies is positive. Some activists are actually campaigning against these technologies. They are saying that it can simplify the government processes, make private businesses more efficient in funding and engaging with their customers, and make the life of citizens more comfortable. It has the potential of encroaching upon the citizens' privacy and perhaps even freedom. So the more digital technologies we are exposed to, the more we reveal ourselves to various government departments and the private sector companies. So what steps can the government do to, mitigate these problems?
Again, there are multiple schools of thought here. So I'll want to simplify the answer for myself, and I'll give the answer which is more relevant from the DPI standpoint, not on the privacy standpoint, because it's a debate which is ongoing. India is one of those forward-looking countries who have actually come out with the Digital Privacy Act. So DPDP is in motion. So all the rule sets are being going to be announced. So I think we, from a privacy and the consent base architecture, we are there already. It's just a matter of a couple of months. We should be completely ready with that. So that actually will allay the fever of, or what you call the fears of people that government is becoming a what you call a controlling nation. So it is not. In fact, it is not actually there. So how do we come? So it actually is two parts to it. One is the design. Now let's look at all these objections. Okay, the objection is about privacy. Objection is about my data. Objection is about my freedom. Let's look at three parts. Data and all these things can be minimized using the entire DPDP framework at the design stage, building the consent. Then the data retention policy can be actually managed through again a retention policy, and giving a control back to citizens, saying that I have the control of asking the department or the service provider to delete my personal data. And first of all is I am exposed. I know what amount of personal data you have collected. So that's the first one which can be done. And the second one is how much is I want to let the government use it in terms of delivering the services back to me, and how much I want to delete it. Okay, what all I wanted to actually mask it up or delete it. I think the act will and the rule set will allow the power in the hands of the citizens. This is there. But before that, I think the best practices would be the building the applications already thinking that the privacy act is in motion. Okay, so we need to design every single application already thinking that there is the consent framework required, there's a retention framework required, there's a purging of data which is required as per the citizens require. That needs to be built, and there's nobody stopping us. It's us as the government, private sector, think tanks. We need to work on this thing, and I think few of the places, if you see Digi Yatra, the first page it says that I don't keep my data more than the time of the flight and after the flight for requiring for this. So they don't. So it's already in motion, and it's as good citizens, I think, and good think tanks, we are actually looking at incorporating in all the application. Now, why not? Why only DPI DPGs? It is going to be applicable for every application which government uses.
We generally think of DPIs as a government initiative, but the fact is it's largely private sector driven, and not even by the multinationals, it's by the startups. It's the startups that are providing bulk of the services to the people and even to some of the government departments. Now, private banks, telecom companies, digital payment and financial services startups, these are the entities that are spearheading the UPI revolution and other DPI revolutions in the country. With so many startups and large players competing in the DPI space, it is possible that DPI may take a direction that we may not like in next 5 or 10 years. So, should the government come up with some kind of futuristic regulation or some kind of reports and study on how this sector is developing, so that we can, think of some future regulation?
So two parts to it. I think I loved your idea of studying the growth of this sector, and I think I will definitely keep it in mind. In fact, whenever I'm having a conversation with the Ministry of IT and or Niti Aayog, we will definitely put up this as one of the pointers where we are constantly in touch with the various stakeholders for various discussions. So I think it's a good idea of defining and looking at the sector well in advance and giving a structure. Where I'm actually not comfortable is the proliferation of the entire DPI, DPG, and the open networks happened because there was a freedom given to everyone. So the startups had the freedom to do it. While putting the regulatory, there will be issues. I think the regulatory environment will run through the DPDP or IT Act and other things. Most important is how do I continue to actually support the startups and the industries, everyone together. And if India has to grow, the India has to get into a deep R&D, deep tech R&D. So it's very difficult if India has to move forward and we don't bring the deep tech RFP R&D into this. It's not possible. So the large corporates will also become participants of this. Now, startups were participants in the DPI, DPG, but it was actually always a seeding done by government, whether it is DGYATRA, which is Airport Authority of India, or Civil Aviation, which actually did it. But thereafter, the airports came and the startups and came and or being developed, or whether it is UPI, the UPI core investment was done by government and seeding. Government will become like an angel investor, seeding the idea, proliferating this, creating its own capacities, giving a what you call as living labs as a proof of concept for all these DPGs, DPIs, and let the private sector. And when I call private sector, it is both the large, medium-sized startups, everyone together, because I think DPIs has shown that all of us can stay harmoniously and benefit from this revolution. So whether it is startups, tech OEMs, CS cloud service providers, high-end consulting firms, or government or anybody, everyone is actually working together to make this as a much better. But I take a point. I think a sectoral analysis and how we can actually help them rather than regulate them. What are the various things that we can give it to them to states, because at the end of the day they have to adopt it. That will actually help the proliferation of DPS also.
Yes. The thing is that much of it is being driven by the startups, which do not have much of an experience, led by very young people. So they can't take business decision and attract consumers while not understanding the full implication of what they are doing. Now you already earlier talked about AI and quantum. So they will have access to these technologies also. So do you think that what kind of impact can AI and quantum have when it is being driven in the sector by the startups, very young startups?
Correct. No, it's not just the young startups. Yes, young startups without a guidance, they will struggle. But more or less, I see whenever who's a startup, the team's biggest motto is how do I either create an impact or create a business model. So the idea is not to actually misuse the technology. I've not come across most of the startups doing that. So therefore, I'll look at it as a positively. Startups will always be the entry points for a kind of a plus one innovation into this technology solution. And there are deep tech startups which will actually do a very deep analysis and they'll come with the research based Coming to the threats of AI and quantum or whatever. So I think it's quite real. We daily we see one or two news reports of fake news or fake generated images and all those things. Yes, what we need is today is the AI governance, ethical AI guidelines and governance model. And I think government is already working on that under the India AI mission. That's part of it. But how do we proliferate that far? How do we actually make sure that it's an inclusive discussion between the startups, bring them on board, start not just the startup, but the corporates, startups, institutions, academics, think tanks, government, all put together. Because if we want to be a Vishwa Guru in Gen AI and AI, the only way we can do is by becoming an ethical AI country. And that's going to be our what you call is a differentiator as against any other country, which actually allows everything to go freely. Because then we are the ones who are actually always, which we say that this is the right way of using it for the citizens and the business benefit. We would be able to hold that flag higher. So the guidelines are already in motion. I think and Niti is also working on this, and we all will contribute in that process.
Most people consider that digital technologies are more environment friendly than traditional brick and mortar kind of systems for service delivery. India has made a global commitment to become net zero by 2070. It's hard to predict what the world will be like in next 5 years, but we have to project in the future. Like China made a 100-year marathon plan, and it has worked out well for them. So if we are making a plan for 2070, it might work out for us. Still, I would like to know your view on the how we can enhance the scope of the India DPI for taking the country closer to the goal of net zero by in the next 50 years.
Very, very beautiful question. Okay. And if you would have asked me about a 1 year back, I would have been actually thinking how the sustainability can be linked with the DPI, DPGs. But in the last 12 months, I've come across so many different what do you call applications and DPI, DPG, open network conversations, which are all focused on climate change, EVs, charging, battery charging, infrastructure management, and all those things, which actually end of the day solves the. Let's take one example, FastTag, which is one of the most talked about DPS. The end of the day, FastTag was a small application which is similar, which is connected to an UPI and your bank transaction happens or a UPI transaction happens based on whatever the toll is collected. Now, what happened is the impact is not just shortening the queues, but impact was the amount of diesel or petrol which was saved because of that, the entire queue time reducing from 15 plus minutes to less than 2 minutes and so on and so forth. So, so now everyone started looking at how the DPIs are contributing into the climate change positively. Vistar, agriculture product solution, it will help manage the entire information tech around the process and help save a lot of time and energy for the farmers. Okay, so that's looking at one part of it. Now, if for example DigiYatra, let's take DigiYatra. In Bangalore, if I earlier used to cross from outside gate to the boarding gate, I used to take any place. I'll take about 25 minutes easily because of the in a very good day, it takes about 2 minutes. In a bad day, it takes about 5 to 8 minutes. So while it looks smaller, but it has huge amount of benefit because I am actually consuming less amount of carbon footprint. I am actually getting ready for my airport or airlines or a flight schedule in time. So all those things, everything. And there is, and I think a lot of us are working on coming out with the reports on how the sustainability impacts can be defined for various DPI and DPGs. And last, I will actually leave one more is the open network. There is so FIDE, which is working on the open network, and they are working very hard on how do I bring open network for charging stations. Today, I will see an app which says that Indian Oil charging station is so and so, and I'll go there. But what if I make it as an open, similar to a platform ONDC, where I can have any buyer or any seller can talk to each other. So why not any EV charging EV person can actually reach out to any of the EV charging stations and so on and so forth. So how do I actually manage that ecosystem and bring it better? So all those things which are coming in motion will help a large amount of sustainability initiatives, and I think I'm very confident that 2070 goal, we are talking about net zero, we would be net positive actually. So in terms of we will be the carbon sink by that time, not just the net zero.
I think as far as digital technologies go, we have seen just a tip of the iceberg as of now. 90% is still underwater. And let's see what kind of systems we see in the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you, Anup. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.